Welcome to the Love Pod, where inspiration, vision, and real connection come alive. Wherever you are, you belong here.
All right, welcome back to the Love Pod, Julia. Everyone, today I'm Julia, and we are joined here by Eleanor Shell, who is a writer, a storyteller, and the heart behind Resilient Magnolia. Her work grew from a life-altering accident in 2024, which I'm sure she'll talk about on today's show, and she's since become a voice of hope, grace, and resilience for so many. So Eleanor, we're so grateful to have you here. And before we dive in, I'd love to welcome you to introduce yourself and maybe share a little bit about who you are and what brings you here today.
So, as you said, my name is Eleanor Shell. So, I'm a mom of three kids under 8. I have Charlie, who is 8, Jake, who is 6, and Blakely, who just turned 2 last week. I'm the wife of an extremely supportive husband named Blake. Prior to my accident, I was a Presbyterian minister and also did a lot of community building and community engagement. Um, Nonprofit consulting and strategic planning in and around Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I share as a mother, it's so special having that, in your life and three little ones. I'm sure they're also your greatest teachers and teach you so much too, and are your greatest mirrors as well and reflect so much onto us, which is such a blessing to have in our lives. And I'm sure all parents out there can, resonate with that. And jumping into, your most important year, 2024, that you describe as a year that changed everything for you. I would love to ask you, what was the moment that you realized life would never be the same again? And what did those early days, teach? Maybe you can share a little bit more about what happened in that year.
So yeah, it was June of that year. It was actually 3 days before my birthday. And I was in a pedestrian versus vehicle accident where I was hit in a parking lot. And actually, I'll say I probably didn't realize until 2025 that life would never be the same. I kept, you know, hoping and working, thinking that things would get better. And it was, I would say, pretty much a year of, oh, I just need to do this, and then I can go back. I just need to do this, and then I can go back. Um, and I let's see, I'm trying to think. I would say so. Let me start here. So, left the scene of the accident. I left the hospital, the ER, thinking I just had a broken arm and, life would go back to normal. And we were just really, really lucky and miracle and that sort of thing. And then around day 4 or 5 after the accident, I started having weird symptoms. I couldn't move my head without getting dizzy. I was like really lightheaded and feeling like I was going to pass out if I stood for any amount of time. And I told my husband, I said, I think something's wrong with my head. And I ended up back at the ER because no one would see me because it was an accident and possible head injury, and was diagnosed with at the time was a concussion slash MTBI, which is mild TBI. It's interesting because in the last year, since I've been in this community and world, the medical community has actually changed and no longer classifies brain injuries as mild, moderate, or severe. They are just a brain injury because
Oh, interesting.
what they'd found is there are people like me who start out with a mild or told they have a mild, who their lives are never the same. And then there are people like, who sometimes are in comas for 10 or 15 days and wake up and are fine. So you just can't tell with the brain. And luckily had some friends who got a hold of my husband and was like, you've got to get her out of Charlotte. There's not great brain care here. I went to the Complex Concussion Center in Atlanta, Georgia, which is one of the best in the country. And they treat people in that critical post-acute, like you have to be 6 months, within 6 months of their accident. And they say they'll get you to about 30 to 40% better. And they did. And so I came home, was continuing with rehab and physical therapy and occupational therapy and all the things. But then I plateaued again around Christmas time last year. So in February, went to the University of Pennsylvania, University of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania, which is the concussion clinic probably in the United States. That's where all the professional athletes go. And I did their protocol thinking, and that I was going to be better at the end of it. And actually that's when I started thinking about Resilient Magnolia, because I thought I was going to have this great story of like come back and you work hard and nose to the ground. And I grew up in the era of Still Magnolia, being from the South, and that movie was real popular. And what it stood for is, you hold it together and you're beautiful on the outside, but you hold it all in. I was like, I don't want to be steel. I want to be resilient.
Mhm.
And I got to the end of that program and I wasn't 100%. And 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 so I guess and then I had my doctor here tell me that I'd kind of reached maximum medical improvement as the kind of the code they use, and asked me to consider pain management. I was like, I can't do that. Like I have 3 kids. Like I've got to keep working to get better, and there's got to be more answers. And um, so I did a couple things this summer. On one hand, I tried to push myself to be like, okay, I can just go back to what I was doing before. It may be a little different, but I'm going to force myself to get better, which you cannot do with a brain injury, and it's actually probably counterproductive. And then I also really started kind of grieving and mourning like what I had lost.
Mhm.
And around August or September, I think I really began to accept like life is never going to be the same. And I need to let go of what was to be able to move forward. And and it still took me about 3 months, 2 more months. It was really October before I really started to be like, saying some of the projects that I tried to pick back up and roles I was trying to do. I'm like, I just can't do it. And part of it was, I think, for my mental health.
Mhm.
Because I still loved the work I was doing and wanted to, um, go back and do those things. Um, and it was very frustrating and very depressing not to be able to perform. Um, but then on the other hand, um, you know, it, um, I was also having new gifts opening up to me, and writing is one of them. I'd never really had been a writer before. And, just kind of said, I know I have to let go, to move
Mhm.
forward. And so I'm kind of still in that letting go to move forward. There are definitely moments that I still am tempted and want to jump back in with both feet. But I'm very open to what is being put in front of me and the possibilities that are there.
That's really love it. That's really lovely. I love that you ended it there, being open to the possibilities and surrendering that, we don't need to control every little thing in our life. In fact, we don't control anything. Things happen and we suffer less when we can accept what's happening and then move forward from there. And when you open your heart in that process, then you can really, be grateful for the beautiful opportunities that are actually all around us all the time. And I love how you speak about resilience. It's such an important quality to have as a human being. And, being a new mom, I'm learning about this as well. I have a little 22-month young babe who's co-sleeping and still nursing and waking up multiple times throughout the night. And I never knew patience and resilience like I ever had before in my life. And so, these experiences, they really help us to grow and teach us that like we are so strong and resilient, and to have the support as well. Like it sounds like your husband was very supportive, and your family and your community moving through this difficult, I can only imagine what a difficult time it was for you, but also seeing how you've turned it around and changed it and have grown from it and are still growing. I love that, because you even said in your application, resilience isn't just pushing through, it's growing through. And
Mhm.
so this is what life is all about. And so I love that you shared that. And really talking about too about the identity shift that you must have had to gone through, like especially when you say it's not about who you were before, but focusing on who you are becoming now in this moment after that happened. Like in every moment we are always becoming something new. And if we can let go of maybe the attachment or the identity that we had of that past version of me before the accident, it's like then you really become free and open up the doors for all these new possibilities that can come to you and for you, because life is for us. And so I want to ask you, how did your sense of identity change through that? And how did you deal with that? Because it probably was very, remorseful in the sense that you feel like this maybe old part of you perhaps was dying. How did you deal with that?
Well, I'm still dealing with it. So
It's
lots
a
of therapy.
process.
Yeah, lots of
Yeah.
therapy. And I'll say like with a brain injury, it's very complicated too, because not only are you dealing with like the emotional side of things and the practical side, intangible side of your identity shift. I mean, it changes your brain chemistry. So, what most people don't know, and what I didn't know it and understand is when you have a brain injury, most of the time it comes a really severe depression and anxiety comes along with it. And not just from the, oh my gosh, I have a brain injury, but from the chemicals change in your head, like the way your brain connects and stuff like that. So that's been an interesting part of the journey too, is trying to balance like what is the chemical change and what is like the situation. And obviously they're both important and they're both complex, but I do mourn, and I feel like I've lost a lot of who I am and things that were important. And and a lot of times it's like the little things too. Kind of one of the most poignant stories, um because I- part of me wants to say that like the career and that sort of stuff doesn't matter, but it does, and but it's in a different way. But my identity as a mother and who I was to my children and what I wanted to do for my children, that was huge. I was older when I got married and older when I had my children. So I'd waited a long time, and that was always my biggest dream. And was really in some ways living the dream because I was older. Um, I was at a place in my career that I could, like I was my children's full-time caregiver in addition to kind of working full-time, because I was able to do contract works, and I was like, okay, here's when I can work. And as long as I got the work done, it was fine. Um, so it was this year. I mean, and there's been a lot of tears over the year, but
Mm.
um, earlier this year, the day before my middle's sixth birthday, I was in the parking lot of Publix in a parking deck in tears because I had to go in and order a cake. Um, and I had always baked my children's cakes from scratch. Like that was very important to me that they knew that. I had always been a good cook, but cooking is actually really hard with a brain injury, and it's one of the last things to come back. And my husband, um, last year, I baked their cakes. My boys, I baked their cakes, and I did it from boxes, and it still exhausted me. And I was like my now 8-year-old's birthday last year, I spent a lot of it in the car because I couldn't, because I was so just tired and exhausted, and everything was just becoming too much. But my husband this year kind of put his foot down and said, they need you present. They don't need a cake.
Hmm.
And so I was in the parking lot in tears, and I called one of my mom's friends, and I was like, I just need you to tell me it's okay that I ordered a cake. And the next morning, when we were going to the birthday party, as we were loading the car, and we were going to stop on the way there to get the cake, um, my middle, he said, I know the surprise. I know you've baked me a cake. And like twist the knife, started
Oh.
tearing up. But I took him inside, and we got this. He's really into Spider-Man. I got this Spider-Man cake, and it was all airbrushed, and it had like this Spider-Man that lit up, and stuff I would not have been able to do decoration wise. And he was like, and was just speechless. And he's like, is that really for me? And you know, in that moment, it was like, okay, this is okay. It's okay. It's okay. And I know that there are millions of kids in the world who don't get cakes on their birthday. I know there are millions of kids in the world who have never had a homemade cake. But it's something that was core to who I am and
Yeah.
important to me. And so I think the morning does come a lot of times in those little moments, when I'm not able to show up in the way that I want to. But then there's the moments of joy because my children just affirm me like all the time. And I give my husband a lot of credit for that, um, because they have seen him do it. And, it's not, I mean, we try to teach our children empathy and we try to teach our children kindness and all of those things, but they have seen that in action time and time
Mm.
again, and they are beginning to emulate it in very powerful ways. So I constantly hear, um, probably more than I should, that I'm the best mom in the world, and like they're so glad I'm their mom. And even with a brain injury, they're glad their mom, and they don't care about the stuff I couldn't do before. And, um, maybe that'll carry over to teenage years, maybe it won't, and stuff. But, um, but it is a mourning, because you're mourning what you were. And then you're also mourning what you thought you would be, what you pictured, um, for your life and for your children's lives. And and there is the kind of the practical things. There are the experiences I want to share with my children that I may not be able to share in the same way, with an accident like this and unexpected job loss and more cost because we need more help. There are financial things that we kind of had a plan for how we're going to pay for college, and how we're going to retire, and all of that's gone. Um, and so there's um, a lot to mourn. Um, but you just have to, I'll say two things. One, you have to stay as hopeful as you can and continue to work towards the goodness that you know and you see. And two, that's where community comes in. And I
Mm.
talk a lot about how, um, my community has stood for me when I couldn't stand. My
Mm.
community has had hope for me when I couldn't find it. Um, and without that community, I don't know, um, where I would be.
Yeah, I love that. And community is such a big deal. And it's also why it's one of our core pillars for Light Heart Vision. We have connection, co-creation, and community. And this is what it's all about. Like we were never meant to do it alone. None of this,
Yeah.
the parenting thing, the life thing, like it was always meant to be together with others around us. And that community doesn't need to be your direct family, but it does need to be people who are wanting to connect and wanting to do things together. And they're out there. And, it's so beautiful when you do have people alongside you that can, support you during times like these. And I just want to say it's so beautiful, the story that you shared with your little son's birthday and the Spider-Man cake. I could totally imagine, because I'm a passionate baker as well. And I just put myself in your shoes and, feeling what it's like, especially when he's like, oh, I know you baked me a cake. Like I could imagine only what you were feeling. But then also on the other side, to hear about his reaction when he saw the Spider-Man cake, it's like it makes you realize a couple things, that children are just full of unconditional love. Like they it's maybe it's important to you that you bake the cake, but at the end of the day he probably just wants to spend his special day with you, and that you're there and you're present, like your husband said. And realizing too that, like, letting go. It's like you spoke about letting go, realizing that this is not something that's right now in your power to do, and that's okay. Why force it? Maybe we're going
Mhm.
to try new ways to do things, and it might be a bit different and uncomfortable at first, but if this is what needs to happen right now in order for me to have my energy and be present at my son's party, then that's okay. And it sounds like it turned out really well. And so what's really cool is that, like, you're moving through this time and this change with your family, alongside your husband, your community, your children. And I'm curious to know, because your children are still young, but like, how is your communication style with them? Do you talk about them with what's going on in your life and the accident and how things are changing?
Yes, yeah. So we are big fans of Mr. Rogers. And if you have done any research or deep dive into Mr. Rogers and kind of his philosophy, is you talk to children like they're adults and you answer
Yes.
their questions as fully as you can. And so that's always been our model of parenting, even the
Love
hard
that.
things. Um, and luckily, I guess for better or worse, having parented through COVID, toddlers, and preschoolers, I mean, we've had to have a lot of hard conversations. Um, and um, and so, we're just honest with them, and on their level. Um, so we, at first it's, mommy's brain is hurt, it works different. It's, mommy can't do this and here's why. And, um, mommy has to go away and here's why, and that like, and just try to explain it to the best of our abilities. We've been really blessed. We actually had engaged, after COVID, my oldest was having some anxiety around health stuff and everything. And so we engaged with a play therapist who's actually a child life specialist. So she actually specializes in the medical world. And so what's great is my children have this great relationship with her name is Miss Brittany, that when this all happened, we were able to dial her back in. And they were able to go, they weren't having an established relationship and they were able to go and work through things with her. But between kind of having, great community, um, and already had established a very open uh, communication style with our children, it's been pretty easy to explain. We have noticed my now 6-year-old, it's kind of sinking in for him a little more this year. So he, at the beginning of this year, beginning of the school year, was really starting to talk a lot more about the accident and about how I'm different, and that sort of thing. And he's kind of an old soul, deep thinker anyway. So, I mean, it could be that he was just processing for this last year, but and we just like you just got to take it as it comes. And I think that's a parenting. Um, it's a parenting thing, no matter what your situation or your life is, and not to get um, political, but we live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and if people watched the news in the United States, they know that we are the latest city that the Border Patrol is in, and we live on the side of town where um, there are masked men at grocery stores and that sort of thing. Um, and we and I never in my life would have dreamed, but we had to sit down and talk to our children on Sunday night and say, you may see this and here's what's happening and here's why it's happening and you may be scared and that's okay. And
Mhm.
reassure them that um we would protect them. And if we see the mass men, like we will change our plans if it's at a grocery store we're going to go to and that sort of thing. And so you know and there are parents all across the city having to have that conversation. So it doesn't matter whether it's about something you're struggling with personally or it's something about our world. Is kids are going to have questions, they're going to have hard questions, and they're going to be hard things to talk about them. So it's comfortable as you can get from the early age of having those hard conversations in a real way. I think it serves you better as your children grow older and there are more complex things that you have to deal with.
Yeah, totally. And I couldn't agree more with that. I know I'm a new parent, but that's the exact same strategy my partner Nathaniel and I have with our little one. And it's the same thing, with one another. Like we are so open and honest in our communication styles with each other, and we have, no other desire than to be that way with our little one. And it's so funny because people sometimes have these ideas or these beliefs but they're young, they don't understand certain concepts, and you need to speak to them in a certain way. But like you said, I totally agree with the Mr. Rogers style. It's like they understand so much more than we
Hmm.
realize. And if we just talk to them like a normal human being, and really they like their soul is no younger, older. It's we're equals. And so they're just in this new body and they're learning to, navigate it, but they understand on such deep levels. And if we can just acknowledge that and talk to them as equals, they will absorb and they listen, And so I think it's so important to be open and honest with them, especially about real matters going on in the world. And, the older they get, maybe the more questions they'll have, like you said. But I really appreciate that you're taking this approach with your little ones. And I think it's so important, especially in today's day and age. And, speaking of, I was wondering if we can go a little bit deeper into the topic of your older one experiencing the anxieties. I feel like a lot of parents could resonate as well with this, especially during the time of COVID. There was so much going, and there still is so much going on in the world, that little ones are having anxiety, in higher numbers compared to times, in the past. And so I just wanted to ask, what are some, if you're open to sharing, of course, what are some things, you spoke about the play therapist, but what are some like actual techniques or tools that worked to help improve his symptoms that maybe others can also take into account?
Well, with him, it's really talking and listening is kind of the number one thing. And making sure we have space and we have left space for him to lead the conversation and to tell us his fears and not to dismiss them, not to say, oh, that's silly. Um, and like right now, actually, it's kind of funny. He is not wanting to sleep with like he wants to have lights on, lots of lights on, in his bedroom when he goes to sleep, and he shares a room with his brother, and his brother wants it completely dark. And he came in our room the other morning and was talking about how he thinks was saying something about there being something in his closet, like his clothes were moving, or that sort of stuff. And something like, oh, you're just seeing thing. You're funny. I listened. Actually, that was kind of a funny thing because I told him a story about when I was little. I used to think there were aliens in my bathroom, and I was like, I swear I could see them. And then like one day I said, I swear I felt someone like scraping my leg, and I looked down and like there was like a scratch mark on my leg, and it was really that I had scratched myself in my sleep and that sort of thing. But like we don't dismiss feelings. And I think that's a huge thing that parents have been conditioned to do it sometimes in the society. And I think we're better at it. You know, and I think there's also a pitfall that you can go too far the other way, where you lead by the feelings. But we work really hard to listen to his feelings, acknowledge his feelings, um, and then look for and explore with him ways that he can cope with those feelings. Um, and we a big thing we say in our house is feelings are never wrong.
Mm,
And if you know, it, I may not be nervous when I'm doing a ropes course and walking across a rope bridge, and for him that may be like death defying. Like I'm gonna die. I can't. And neither one of those outlooks are wrong. Um,
mm,
and it, I'll say sometimes it's hard as a parent because as kids are growing and they're experiencing feelings and they're understanding feelings, sometimes they do have some feelings that are not really valid. You want to say that's silly. That's not valid. Better than that and that sort of thing. But if they're expressing them, they really don't.
mm,
And so helping them understand what their feelings are, and then also helping them um, find ways to move beyond those feelings. And and luckily we do have a great play therapist who's actually a friend, has turned into a friend. We go to the same swim club. So we have Miss Brittany and like do a lot of drawing about our feelings.
mm,
Um, we when he does have anxiety, and actually this is on my list to do with him this afternoon or tomorrow afternoon, is we're going to have him draw something that represents the anxiety that he has at night when there's not enough lights on. And we've done this before. You hang it on the wall, and then when he's feeling that, he looks at that physical representation and says, "You are not real, go away."
mm,
And having that to be able to say, you know I know this, and help them have tangible ways to connect
mm,
with the things that are causing them anxiety, um, and let them know that they can tell it to go away. It may not listen, but you have the power um, to 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 say this is not something I'm going to let you keep doing to me.
yeah, you're reclaiming your power. I
Mm.
love that, and especially the part where you're using creativity to turn it into creative expression. I think that's so important and something tangible, like you said. I think it's such a big deal to acknowledge and honor all feelings, whether they're big or small, because they're simply a part of us, and they're just wanting to be expressed, to be felt, to be embraced, to be loved, to be heard and listened to. And the more that we can hold space for our children to do that, the better off they're going to be. And I find it so interesting interesting, Eleanor, because I feel like a lot of the times when parents cannot, hold space or accept the feelings or the emotions of their little ones, it's because they're also having a hard time doing that for
Mhm.
themselves, right? Maybe they
Yeah.
were never taught how to. And so it becomes a big deal, especially whenever you have all these feelings that are coming up for a reason, wanting to be felt, and then they're being pushed down. It really does a lot of harm. So when they come up, this is what parenting is all about. It's not just about raising our children, it's also about raising our inner child, because there is a little, our inner children who live inside of us as well. And so when we can acknowledge and just accept and love all of our feelings that come up and not label them as good or bad or right or wrong, and just be with them, then that's where the magic happens. And I know this as well because I've experienced this on many different occasions. And it can be challenging though, especially when you're seeing things from a different perspective of your little one, or maybe you don't understand. Like, for example, you probably don't have the same fear or anxiety around the lights being turned off. And so, you really have to bring yourself down to their level, put yourself in their shoes and be like, okay, this is what he's feeling right now. And that's okay. I love him. I honor him. And I'm going to help him move through this by showing him what it's like to, be with your feelings. And we can't do the work for them, but we can show them that it's okay for these feelings to arise, and that we're gonna work through them together as a team. And
Mm.
it's really becomes fun and exciting when you get to do art through it and be creative. And I think that's really cool, because then it just becomes this tangible thing, and it also becomes a healing technique where they like, okay, like I get to draw my anxiety. What does it feel like right now? What does it look like today? Or where is it in my body? What
Mhm.
color is it? Like, you get to kind of give it this persona, and it becomes fun, and it's an interesting way to kind of tackle it. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I do. I will say I do think a lot of issues adults have, end up our kids end up paying for and all. So luckily, my husband and I both did a lot of therapy before we were parents.
Right
So
on.
yeah.
Well, I like to think it's getting better with every generation that's coming through. So
Yes.
even if it's a little bit, better every time, that's what counts. So yeah, I'd love to talk into some of, the ways that you creatively expressed through your own healing journey after the accident. So I know you spoke about writing, and, this kind of became like a way to also heal, but also in public. So I would love if you could share more about how that started, and how that kind of helped you in your healing journey. And maybe you could even talk about the Substack that you created.
Yeah. So it really started with me trying to heal and me trying to process this, and it started. I think I think there's a lot I thank God for. One is that I had this injury in the time of this technology, because um, I'm able um, to do talk to text, which is so in the mornings when I'm doing my walks in the morning, I talk a lot into my headphones, and it um, and it was kind of a way of journaling and processing, and then from and then like I download it, and then I would outline it, and then I'd process. It was just like this kind of a process, and came up with this thing I'm calling the resiliency arc. I don't know if that is what it'll stay or not, but kind of the stages you have to go through when you hit one of the bigger moments in life. Not everybody's going to get hit by a car, but we all have those moments, whether it's a job loss, whether it's a breakup, whether it's a move, whether it's something medical like cancer or a diagnosis for your child or whatever. Um, and a couple things and all in the last year, I kept saying, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. Like, I know how to throw an event for 20,000 people. I know how to show up to an event for 20,000 people and have 100 porta johns in the wrong place and get them moved in 20 minutes. I know how to, um, speak without a script in front of 10,000 people. Like I did not know how to be a patient. I didn't know how to not be working towards something. I didn't know how to be on a journey that I didn't have an outcome, control really over the outcome. Um, this is not something like I thought that I was working towards X, getting back to normal. And then when that was not obvious, it's like, I know I have to keep working, but I don't know what I'm working for. And like that, like I don't know how to do that. Um, and so, just in processing my own thing, I kind of came up with these steps that I think you have to go through, um, that really represent true resiliency. As much as I thought, and I'm sure a lot of people think resiliency is, being able to bounce back. Um, it's it's about being, I believe now, it's about being able to grow and bloom anyway. Um, and so the first thing I did, is and I started sharing it with people like, hey, this is the idea I'm working on, this is the thing. And as I was doing it, I also started like creating resources, like things I wish I had. And so the first stage, and I call it a stage, even though it has the word day, which is represents one, but it's more than, most of the time more than just one, is the bad day. And we are not good at sitting in bad days as individuals or as a community. We want to jump towards hope. We want to believe that hope is coming. We want to see the silver lining. And that is not always there. And um, it it doesn't really show and represent, and honor what is there, as if you quickly try to, every rainstorm, you have to go through the rain to have a rainbow, that sort of stuff, like nothing. I mean, I could become a best-selling author and have my own TV show and be a bazillionaire because of my writing after my brain injury. And that still does not make what has happened to me okay or
Mm.
better. Because I would give up any fame or fortune I get in the next 30 years of my life to be who I was on June 11th and to be the parent that I was on June 11th. Um, and and so you've got to sit and acknowledge that this is hard and this is not what you asked for. And so I actually launched my Substack with writing about for 8 weeks on bad days. And people are like, "What? How are you writing about bad days for 8 weeks?" Because there's a lot to talk about because we don't talk about them. Um, and I've created resources that I hope, that I'm trying to figure out how to get printed and create a business of. One is the Bad Day Journal, and it's a journal that's 60 pages that doesn't have one positive quote in it, because sometimes you just need to have a bad day.
Mm.
And I'm also working on resources for people who are trying to support people in a bad season. Um, you know, I say this a lot, like I know we're gonna be okay. I know um that it could be worse.
Mm.
I know that I'm lucky that I'm still alive. I know that I'm lucky that I can still walk. I know that I'm lucky that I can spend an hour on a podcast, and appear normal. Like I know all that stuff. I don't need um any and and I understand that when you're with someone, like it's uncomfortable for you as the person sitting next to someone with a bad day, because part of you, whether you know it consciously or not, is thinking, oh my gosh, this could happen to me, what would I do? And you want to make yourself feel better, that if something bad like this happens to you, you can get through it. But that's not what people need. They know that. They know it all. They know it could be worse. They know what they need is they need someone is um who sees them and is gonna and not gonna leave them, if that
Mm.
makes sense. They need to know that someone is there, even if this bad day and this bad season last 6 months or 8 months or and all. And so, like, in addition to the bad day journal, like I've created these greeting cards, and like one of them, there are two people um in the sitting in a rain, and they have a little umbrella, and it says, wow, this is a big storm. And on the inside it says, and my umbrella is small, but I'll get wet with you.
Love that.
So yeah, and that's all people want to know, in these situations. and the other thing, my new other new catchphrase is that um I like to say is if you don't say anything, you're not going to say the wrong thing.
Mm,
And it's enough to just be present.
mm. I love that. It kind of ties it back into the community piece, right? Like people knowing that they don't have to go through such a hard time on their own, and it's not meant to be like that. And so it's really nice to have someone kind of come in and support, a loved one and show up in that way. Yeah, that's really cool that this has all inspired you to, work on these resources for others. And, you know, I'm just curious to know if people wanted to access this journal now, is it available for the public?
It's not, the journal's not available for the public yet. So, and I've got to raise, as I mentioned earlier, like, uh,
Mhm.
having lost my job and all that, like finances are tight, so I've got to figure out how to fund it. But I am working on some like print out one page print offs and that sort of stuff that will be on my Substacks probably in the next couple of weeks, that are kind of preview for some of the resources and our resources that can be used right away if people want.
Okay. I actually have never had a Substack. My partner has kind of dove into it like very, yeah, not super deeply, but I'm just curious. So it's not just a writing platform. You could also sell, products on it?
Well, I don't know that you can sell products on it, but you can have like downloads on it and that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So eventually, like I'll have to set up some type of, store on the website and that sort of stuff. Luckily, I have a good friend who is a webby person, design person, and she's kind of gone on this journey with me and is doing it all because she loves me and she believes in uh what I'm doing and knows that I need the purpose and that sort of thing. So, she's working on all that. But yeah, I mean, I think I could spend the rest of my life, you're talking about bad days and the next days and that sort of thing, because I think it's so important to people. Um, because the other thing I'll say, and actually this is an LHV podcast exclusive because I don't think I've shared this with anyone else, is when you're going through something like this, that's not going to be okay, or it's not going to be okay for a long time, or it just seems to getting piled on. Um, one of y- and people keep throwing, oh, it'll get better, and that sort of stuff. That puts pressure on you to make it better, and it
Mm,
also makes you think, oh, if I don't tell them I'm okay, if I don't tell them that I'm getting better, if I don't tell them, like, are they going to leave? Are they not going to,
yeah.
and so I think that's another part of it too, is people need permission to not be okay for as long as they need to not be okay. Um, and there's a friend of ours in town who lost a son, I don't even think it was two yet, to leukemia. And it's funny, it's been, I want to say 10 years or so. And she still at times will post or talk openly about missing that child, about,
Mm.
you know, um, gosh, it's his birthday today, he should be starting middle school today, that sort of thing. And people are like, I can't believe, she still talks about, and I'm like,
Better believe it.
do you think she just wakes up one morning and is like, oh, okay, I lost, I
Yeah.
grew this child in my stomach for 9 months and, you know, a- and I don't miss him anymore. It's like,
No, it doesn't work that way.
it doesn't work that way. And yeah, there are lots of times that you can talk to her and have a conversation and it doesn't come up at all, but she's always going to carry it with her.
Of course. Yeah, it's a part
Um,
of her life journey now.
yeah.
So how could someone who's really wanting to support a loved one through a hard time, like rather than just saying, "Oh, it's going to get better," how would you suggest that they show up for them to help support them?
You say, I'm here.
Mm.
And the other things I say is a couple, is don't say, what do you need? Because they don't know what
Yes.
they need.
Right.
Um, you know, and I have a list that I'm creating, like 50 things you can do for someone,
Oh, I love that.
without asking. And one of the things, I have one friend who she'd gone through a pretty traumatic like femur break, and had to have like four surgeries, and like her
Oh,
whole life
wow.
changed. And so when I got hurt, like she sent me um a bunch of cards, and she's like, open them when you need them. So I had
Mm.
like 12 cards, and if I was having a day, I knew I could open one of her cards and it was going to have something, nice in me.
Mm,
It's another good thing um, is asking people not how are you doing, but how are you doing today?
mm,
Because there are days that I'm able to say, today's a really good day. And
yeah,
then there are days that's like, oh, yeah, it's not so good.
yeah,
Having a good day doesn't mean that overall there aren't bad things happening. And having a bad day doesn't mean overall there aren't good things happening. When you are in a long-term um, struggle, both and are true.
yeah.
And so if, try to focus on that moment in time. Um, if you are there to have a deeper conversation, um, say you go to their house, you can say, how are things going overall? Or, would you like to talk about
Mm,
what's happening in with your medical team? Would you like to talk about how the kids are doing? Giving people permission to help guide the conversation,
mm,
I think is important as well. Um, and you know, I, like there are things, and I tell this to people, all the time, like people always need food, like always, everybody has to eat, with very few exceptions, so a gift card to a restaurant or to a grocery store or to whatever, and you may think, gosh, what's $25 at a grocery store going to do? But first of all, I get that gift and I think, wow, they're thinking about me. Then when they use it, they're like, wow, you know what I'm saying? And it's just that reminder that community is there for you.
yeah. Yeah, I really love that. You're making me think of whenever we had our little girl. We were actually away, very far away from family. We were on the other side of the country, and we had her on Vancouver Island. And everyone was wondering, "What are you doing there? You're so far from family." But the one thing we did have was community. And it truly takes a village. And after our little girl was born, we had friends just drop food off at our door, come pop by for a visitor, ask us, what do you need? What do you need today? Is everything okay? Can I get you something? And it's just having that love and that support and just people showing up or knowing that you can rely on someone. It truly makes all the difference. And sometimes it's just the littlest things, the littlest thoughts, or reaching out with a positive message. And I really love, the suggestions you gave, Eleanor, and especially never assuming things and really inviting them to speak if they're feeling ready in the moment, asking how they're doing in every moment because they're constantly changing, just as you and I are on good and bad days. And so really inviting them and letting them know that you're there with an open heart and ears to
Mhm.
listen, because
Yeah.
sometimes maybe that's all they need is just someone to hear them. And yeah, I think you gave some really nice tips.
Yeah.
I want to ask you too, because the other part of that, the other side of that is receiving. So I know that you also, experienced that as well during your recovery and probably still are. So, a lot of people sometimes have a hard time, receiving because maybe they think they don't deserve it or they don't understand why all this stuff is coming to them and they don't want it to be out of pity. And so, like, what can you share about your experience about actually letting yourself to vulnerably and authentically receive from others?
So that's a complex question because I'm not always great at it still. Um, I'll say a couple things. First of all, I had actually been actively working on being a gracious receiver for several years. I used to work for an organization that supported a school and a community in Haiti. And
Okay.
when I would go to Haiti, in Haiti, if someone offers you something and you say no, that's an insult to them.
Mm,
That's telling them that you don't need them and making it where there's an imbalance in the friendship. So, I would go to Haiti and I worked in this mountain community kind of away from all the drama um, that engulfs that country in a lot of ways. And I mean, people there, I mean, they literally live in grass huts. I mean, they have outdoor kitchens and that sort of stuff. And they would want, people would want to buy me a Coke or they'd want, and it's like, I don't need you to buy me a Coke. And Actionel, who's the um, Haitian director there, and he's like, no, that's offensive. And, and I really, for about 2 years, I was going down there pretty regularly, and I'd come back to the States and
Mhm.
We would go out to dinner with a group and like, there was the whole like, oh, the check comes and oh, I'm gonna pay. No, I pay, that sort of, and it's like, and we're kind of taught in America and in Western culture, like, you should be the, that's, you know, and I can't remember, I think it may have been 2018 when I said, I'm going to stop doing that. Like if someone offers to buy me coffee when we're meeting for coffee, I say, thank you. So I had been practicing gracious receiving. Um, but I will say most of the time, even when I was doing that, I kind of knew it was equal. You know what I'm saying? Even though it was like, I'm letting them, like, I kind of knew, well, I'll be able to get them coffee next time, or I'll be able to get them, and, um, and so, it still wasn't just that, well, I'm taking. Um, and since the accident, a couple things happened. Number one, we had no choice. Like, I mean, I could not feed my family. I could not cook a meal. I mean, not even boil pasta and pour sauce on it. Like, I mean, I didn't have the capacity to do that. Um, you know, I did not, I couldn't drive myself places. I couldn't, so like, first of all, when you're in that situation, you got to do it. And then as things have gone on and things were, things are better, um, but we still need it. Like we still like, you know, we, I mean, even now with the holidays, we're not quite sure how that's going to work. I mean, we, lost an income, lost, and at some, for about 8 months, we lost both in incomes, kind of a long story. My husband had started a new job, and in America, he didn't qualify for family medical leave. So he, was trying to be a caregiver, and that's just, you can't do both. Like he just couldn't do both. And, so, you have incomes going down. And then we did the calculations about a month or so ago, and our like the expenses related to my accident, it's like $5,500 a month. And I don't know about in Canada, but in America, one of the things they tell you to do is have 3 months savings of your salary in case of an emergency. And that's fine if you just lose your job. But if you lose your job and you have, you know, this amount of money um that's going out now, the math doesn't work. Um and and I wrote actually on my Substack there's a whole reflection I wrote that's like, we shouldn't have needed to ask for it. Like we shouldn't need help. Like we should. I mean, I have 3 master's degrees. Like my husband just finished a master's program, um, yeah, about 6 months after my accident. He'd been in school for 2 years before prior. He comes from generational wealth. Like I had been financially independent, since I was like 16 or 17, and all of these reasons. Um, but to truly be in a community, you have to be able to give and receive.
Mhm.
And one of the things my therapist says to me regularly is people who build community have community.
Mhm.
And she said every time you receive help from an individual or organization, you're receiving it because you have been connected to them,
Mm.
prior to this. And and we have and are and probably will for the foreseeable future, because the legal process in the United States is crazy. And eventually there will be some type of financial settlement, probably won't be near enough, but until that happens, like we have to be open. And I think it changes your perspective on giving, because if I'm not willing to receive help, was I really giving help because I felt like that's what community does? Or was I giving help because it made me feel good?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so it's humbling, it's humiliating, it's um sad, but it's also beautiful. Um, and as a matter of fact, I don't know if you can hear, there's people drilling outside my door right now. And it's a nonprofit here in Charlotte called She Built This City. And I had reached out to them. I'd done some grant work with them. And when I was trying to go back to my normal life, I'd reached out to about a project we were trying to finish it up. And I was telling them about the accident. And and I was saying, we've got some repairs that need to be done on our home. Like we were planning on moving. I was like the week of my accident, I was working with people to help stage our home so that we could move, sell and move. And but we're not gonna be able to do that for a while. And it's like, I know you do some repair work, is there a way that we could get on a payment plan or, whatever? And they were like, actually, we just, have this new contract with the county. And if you're disabled, there's this program for just people with disabilities. And all, and like they're repairing, doing our house repairs for us that through this program with the county. And, I don't know, I would probably not have known or about the program or even how to look up a program like that if I wasn't already in relationship with that organization because I had done stuff for them in the past.
Mm.
Um, and also there's been some really beautiful moments like that.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, right? It comes and it goes, and we give and we receive. It's like a constant flow in life, and it's not easy for everyone, absolutely. And I think a big part of it that is also overlooked is the simple power of gratitude. A lot of the times, um, a lot of people feel like they need lots to be grateful for, but that's not necessarily true. Sometimes we can just focus on what we do have and be grateful for that, and then more of it will come into our lives if we stop focusing on the lack. And that's not easy for a lot of people. But I really love also how you touched upon, like, should we give because it feels like it's the right thing to do and that's what we should do, or do we give out of the kindness of our hearts and because it makes us feel a certain way? And a lot of people don't always have an easy time staying focused on that gratitude piece or on the hope, you know
Mhm.
that is there, especially on days when it feels so hard and challenging, or there's financial struggles. So like when you have those days where it's hard to stay connected to that hope piece, what are some small practices or things that light you up, that kind of remind you to feel good about it and keep moving forward?
Number one, I remind myself that I don't have to feel good about it, move forward. Uh, and sometimes, let myself sit there.
Okay.
And and because and sometimes I just cry because that's all you
I
can
love
do.
that.
Um but what's been truly miraculous about this journey is the fact that number one, um that I can that almost every time I get that I'm at that, lowest, like I get the random text message or I get, you know what I'm saying? Like there's something like that. And then the other thing that I do is, for me is I try to find a way that I can still give and be of value to the community.
Hmm.
And that's where this honestly, that's where the writing came out of is like, I can't do all the things I used to do. I'm not, this Christmas, we're not adopting an angel. We're not, donating to food drives and and that sort of stuff. So I can't, there are things I can't give to the world anymore, but I can do this writing and work to get this message out there so that someone else who's having a bad season knows they're not alone and knows they're
Okay.
not together. And so um there are times, and my husband makes fun of me, like if things are really bad, like sometimes I'll just um and I can't be out a lot, but I can especially with voice to text, be on the computer and research and that sort of stuff. And so like, one out of one of those days, like I found this organization that is like in distracted driving, and I fill out the form so that I can be a speaker for them now. And I have done uh try to write I'll write a thank you card or write a note to someone, and reminding, because I think for me, and this is a different, situations, because sometimes, because in some ways the injury has really taken away my strengths and accentuated my weaknesses. So because I was a very outgoing community networker connector, and I can't do that anymore. And um and so reminding myself that I can still do things, and I do still have value in this world. Because I think
Hmm.
that's the other thing is when you're constantly being the one that has to have the support and have things given to you, you think, gosh, what am I giving to the world?
Hmm.
And so then, and I think for most people, whether we admit it or not, then you say, what is my value? Um, so, um, those are the finding a way, even if it's as small, um, as, sometimes when I walk the dog, I'll pick up a piece of trash that's on the road. It's like, and that seems really simple, but it's like, nope, I can still do something that brings value to this world, no matter how small it is.
Hmm. I love that. I feel like I set myself up for that question.
Yeah, I know what you're doing. I was like, oh, I'm gonna, but because um, and sometimes it doesn't make it better, and that's okay. But I'm
Let me,
actually about to start the new. Tomorrow there's a post that'll go up that talks about the next series, which is the next day, which is when, because you can't stay in the bad day forever.
right.
And so what are the small steps you take to make sure you're not just, sitting in a spiral and
So let me reword it then. Like, I understand writing is a big part of your life as well. What are some other things that are currently alive or light you up right now?
um being with my kids, obviously, are, that's such a joy. Um, talking to people, feeling like I'm connected, um, it's really great. Um, I um, really, one of the things that uh, so the injury's taken away. Like I can't go watch movies anymore. Um, but going to live theater performances,
Mm,
and seeing beauty and
fun.
art. And like I said, can't really go to concerts, but um, I've spent some time even by myself. Something I would have never done before the accident is we have some great art galleries and museums here, and I can just go there for a day. I can go there for a couple hours, um, in ways. Like I said, I would have never done that alone before, but being able to do your walking, like it's, it sounds crazy and it's simple and, all that stuff, but, walking outside, um, and just seeing the beauty, and feeling the air and hearing the sounds. Um,
Therapeutic in itself.
yeah, it is. Actually, that's probably the number one thing, that besides the writing, is just getting outside, um, sitting, sitting outside with my shoes off, feeling the
Mm,
ground.
love that.
So,
And that is literally therapy because you're grounding and you're
yes.
draining so much inflammation through the bottom of your feet. So that's super helpful,
Yeah.
especially when the season allows it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have one question for you here before we close off, Eleanor, and that is if I were to hold a microphone in front of you and if you could share, a piece of truth or some sort of light with the whole world about having bad days, what would it be?
I mean, probably just that you can have a bad day,
Mm.
period. Not you can have a bad day because tomorrow will be better. Not, you can have a bad day because everything happens for a reason. You can have a bad day. Just you can have a bad day.
Mm. And that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's kind of like how you shared with, the way you communicate with your children, like letting them be with our feelings. I think
Mhm.
we need to be with our bad days a little bit more and stop trying to escape them because, we might find a rainbow on the other side, like you mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you
Yeah.
don't feel it, if you don't feel those things, whatever it is that comes with that bad day, they're
Yeah.
not going away.
Yeah. Oh no. They'll just get stronger. And yeah, the more deeper we dig them down, the stronger they're going to get, screaming to be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Is there anything else you would love to share with our audience before we sign off?
No, not that I can think of.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, I
that's
mean, you've done
okay.
great. Like I said, y'all are doing great. And you when you ask all the questions, I mean, in some ways I could talk forever. In some ways, I'm like, no, there's been a lot of good things in this conversation.
Well, it sounds like you're just going with the flow as I am. So I love that. I love how you shared so much and you were so vulnerable with us and our audience today. I felt your heart and, you shared with grace and courage. And your story is a reminder that also resilience isn't just about a destination. It's a journey and it's a process. And we all go through that in our own unique ways. So for everyone who's listening, I will add your links to your Substack and how to connect with you in our show notes. I'll add that after I post the video today. And yeah, if you'd love to follow her work, I'm sure her journal will be ready soon, along with all the other resources that she's working on. And we're just so grateful to have you and for you to remind us that even the hardest seasons, of life can hold seeds of new life, and that none of us are meant to heal or go through these days alone. So thank you, Eleanor. And yeah, we'll see you all in the next episode.
Thanks for watching. You say ciao ciao.
Bye.
I love you so much.